Hello and welcome back to the Content Bite. I'm Rachel Smith, a freelancer, content producer, and the founder of the jobs board Rachel's List. If you're a new listener, we are a podcast to help writers of all kinds create a thriving business and a career that they love. And of course, build a customer base, which is at the heart of today's podcast episode and what we'll be talking to our special guest about. But before I get into that, I'm going to let my co-host Lynn Testoni introduce herself too. Hi, Lynn. I'm guessing you are excited as I am about today's episode.
Oh, yes, Rach. So excited. Hi, everybody.
We love talking about money, don't we, and customers.
Well, I think we like talking about making money easy and
Yes.
getting customers easy. That's the thing.
Absolutely.
So as Rachel said, my name is Lynn Testoni and I'm also a content creator, writer and journalist. And this week we're very pleased, thrilled even, to be talking to Rounded's co-founder and COO Oliver Garside. And I know that many of you will be aware, given so many freelancers use Rounded's accounting software. Welcome, Oliver. We're so pleased to have you here.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. Delighted to be on.
It's great to see you again, Oliver. I know it's been a little while, but we know each other pretty well because Rounded and Rachel's List have had a long and sort of successful collaboration, I guess, since you guys launched. And I'm also a huge fan of Rounded as well. But I'm thrilled because we're talking to you today about the Rounded journey, which is something I haven't really heard before. We're also going to talk about how some of your businessy tips and growing a customer base might be useful for freelancers, aren't we?
Yeah, well, hopefully some of the things that we've gone through, we think are probably relevant to anybody running a business. So here to share the story and some of the things we've learned.
And also for anyone out there who's wondering if Oliver's going to give us some tax tips as well, you're in luck. We're going to do tax at the end, aren't we? End of financial year.
We will, but just end of financial year tips. I'm obviously not an accountant, so I'm not qualified to give actual tax or accounting advice, but I'm certainly happy to talk about the learnings of the nearly 6 end of financial years that I've been through with our freelance customers and some of the good and the bad and the ugly that we've seen over that course of time.
Fantastic.
That's great. Why don't you talk us through the Rounded journey and what the early days look like for you as a company and how long has the company and product been around?
Yeah, so I think if you go right back to the beginning, the genesis of Rounded was probably sometime in 2015, which seems like an awful long time ago now that we're in the 2020s. My now business partner, Grant McCall, was a professional freelancer, videographer, filmmaker, graphic designer working for clients all around the world. And essentially, he got frustrated with the lack of dedicated software for Australian freelancers. And so the first version of Rounded, it was something he hacked up to solve his own problem. And then he developed it and a bit more and more and brought on our technical co-founder and chief engineer and realized that there was, he wasn't the only person that had recognized this gap. And so fast forward then to the beginning of 2016, I had just decided to leave a very well-paying job with a large social media company to look for something with a little bit more entrepreneurial. Went to the UK for Christmas, came back, and I was having a glass of wine on a Sunday afternoon with my then very good friend and now business partner, Nick Beams. And Nick is the other director and co-founder of Rounded. And he said, look, I've just invested a little bit of money in this accounting software, and I've got these 2 guys who've built this brilliant product and we've got no way of knowing what to do with it. Why don't you come along and take care of the customer side of things and the sales side of things, which was my background. So after a little bit of due diligence and meeting Grant and finding out a bit, I knew nothing about accounting, I knew nothing about freelancing, but it seemed like as good a punt as anything else. So I joined in March of 2016. So just over 5 years ago, we had no customers, we had no money, we had no infrastructure. I was given a laptop and I was pretty much sitting where I am now at my kitchen desk. And it was like, great, I've given myself this really fancy job title on LinkedIn and I'm director of something or, whatever it is. And then it's like, right, what the bloody hell do I do now?
We can all relate to that, Ollie.
Yeah, so sort of 6 years later, I'm sitting in the same chair at the same kitchen table asking myself the same question.
You are not.
Okay.
You've got loads of customers now.
We do. We're very fortunate in that regard. So yeah, that's sort of the condensed story. So since then, we've been learning together, learning about the world of freelancing, learning about the world of accounting, learning about the world of software as a service. And, certainly personally, the last 6 years, whilst they, haven't yet been particularly financially rewarding, you never get involved in a startup for the money, I can tell you that much. But professionally, in terms of what I've learned and the opportunities that I've had and the things that I've been able to do, it's been certainly the most exciting part of my whole professional career. Plus, I've had 6 years of being able to be a lot more present at home, spend time with my young family. My wife has a very successful career in professional services, and so her, I've been able to support her as well throughout that, and countless meet the teachers and all of that sort of great stuff. I guess the upside of being your own boss is, you've got to enjoy the good bits, even if you're not making a great deal of money.
Yes.
That's what it's all about, really. I mean, that's the perk of being your own boss, as you say. Also, I think it's really interesting how you said that Grant saw a gap in the market. Isn't that so true, that so many great products come out of someone going, I can't find anything that does this, so I'm just going to create it.
Yeah, there's certainly that adage in software that all of the best software apps come from somebody solving their own problem to begin with. Unless you do something that no one else in the world does, the chances are there are lots of other people out there that have identified, even subconsciously, they're frustrated by the same gap.
That's so true. And obviously, a product needs customers, and I've been a Rounded customer from the start, but I feel like Rounded has always been very strategic about zeroing in on your ideal customer, which is obviously freelancers. But how important is that? And do you think that many small businesses try to be too many things to too many people, and it doesn't work?
I think going back to the original question, obviously understanding your customer is, for a business like ours, and really for any business, is the basis of everything. We've built a brand and a reputation of being for freelancers, and that gives us a lot of things. So that focus and perhaps narrow-minded approach influences our marketing, influences our content, it influences our product roadmap. And because we have such a diverse range of customers, every customer wants something different, and you have to focus on that core. So, sometimes that's really difficult, especially at the beginning when you're trying to chase as many customers as you can and validate the idea and get the product market fit. But actually what's happened is you learn quite quickly that if you are undisciplined about your focus, that it causes way more problems. And if you are knee-jerk reaction to every single customer request, which especially at the beginning, and even now, the more customers you have, actually, the more disciplined you need to be about that. So, certainly for a software company, really being able to define your customer is super important. But it's a trap everybody can fall into. You can think of a freelancer trying to set up a business and to build a reputation, and they may not have a lot of business, but then somebody comes in and goes, oh, well, would you want to do this? And it's sort of maybe only 20% of what I do, and not really my niche and not really my speciality. And it's like, well, do I go and take the money? Do I run the risk of doing something that's not really that great and perhaps damaging my reputation? Or do I then get a name for sort of doing things over here when really I want to be over here? So it's not to say, it's sort of going to be dependent on sort of everybody. I personally think that, having a very clearly defined understanding of who your ideal customer is very important for any business.
I really think that's one of the hardest things that freelancers have to grapple with, because, we think if we niche down too much, we're going to miss out on other opportunities. And, we might quite like, I have probably 4 really big niches that I serve, and I feel really lucky that I generally have enough work to keep going, and I get work for all those niches. But I think I often see copywriters, who say I only work for, women businesses, or, I only do financial writing, or that sort of thing. So it is a really big question to grapple with when you're starting a business, no matter what. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a balance. The copywriter is a great example. There'll be many listening to this. You might be a copywriter, but if you can also maybe do a little bit of design, or, not that you want to set yourself up as a graphic designer, or if you could do a bit of coding or something that is complementary to your core skill set, that may well be a way that you can, open yourself up as a more self-sufficient option. Because, okay, well, look, you can, if you've got those clients, you can say, look, I can mock you up a logo, or I can find a little image for this, or I could actually do you an infographic because you know how to use Canva or whatever it is. So that's not to say that, as an individual, certainly as a business as well, that you don't invest in broadening your skill set and improving the quality of the service that you offer. But there's I guess for everybody, there's going to be, that balance of width versus depth. If you see what I mean, do you go super deep in a very narrow field, or do you broaden that out a little bit just to allow you to do a little bit more?
I think one of the things that really resonated with what you're saying, Ollie, is that when you start, it's really hard to turn down work. That's when you're at your most vulnerable. It gets a lot easier as your product or your service develops. So as you said, you started, like, everyone's coming back. Can you do this? Can you do that? It's really hard to say no. And sometimes you have to balance it up. You give some things a go because you think, actually, if I did this, that might add, like, when you're talking about doing some Canva, that might add to my offering, but there's a point when it dilutes it too much. So it's an interesting balance, and it is easier as you get through as the business matures.
Yeah, I think to a certain extent it is, and actually there's probably some value in the trial and error. We're where we are now because we've made those mistakes around, in hindsight, we probably shouldn't have reacted that way and probably shouldn't have done that. One of the first things I learned when I joined Rounded, and somebody said to me that's always stuck, and so something that sticks in my mind now as I get better and better at it, is that, managing customers' expectations is really nothing more than finding creative ways to say no.
I love that.
And you get better, especially in the software business. You get a lot better than that. But sometimes it's not saying no to the customers; it's saying no to yourself.
Yes.
And understanding, like, although this is super tempting, we've done this before, and we know that it's going to end in tears. So as much as there's a sort of a little dangly carrot there, I'm just going to have to be disciplined and walk by. But you can only get to that point through a bit of confidence and experience, I think.
Yeah. Since you guys started from scratch and you had to build a customer base from the ground up, how did you start? Talk us through some of the strategies that you used right when you started and building up that base.
Yeah, well, I wish that this was going to be a more glamorous part of the story, but it's not. So as I said, go back.
Maybe we need to hear that anyway.
Yeah, well, look, I was thinking about this because I actually remember distinctly, how I got in touch with Rachel. And look, at the beginning, as a startup, you've got no money to spend on anything, and I walked past my bus stop, like a bus stop on the way to my local shops in suburban Melbourne, and there's bus stops painted in light blue with Xero logo. It's like they've got so much money they can brand bus stops, and it's impossible for us to compete with that. Like, we have 5 customers or whatever it is. I got to the point quite quickly where I didn't want to worry too much about what we couldn't do. I had to focus on what we could. And I believe, so number one, I believed in the product, and I guess if you sort of translating this as a new freelancer, you would have to say that the freelancer must believe in themselves, that they're good enough to be able to work as a freelancer and to build a business. So I knew that the product was good. I'd come from a software background. I knew that it was well designed. I believed in the growth of the market, and so I felt that I could be quite passionate about it. And that was really the starting point. So for me, it was by hook and by crook, how many people can I get this in front of? What started was me, emailing every single co-working space I could find and sending them a code for 12 months free if they, sent it out. I literally trawled LinkedIn manually and built myself a list of freelancers, found, you've all got websites with your email address, and so that it didn't come across as marketing spam, I individually emailed, make myself do 20 or 30 a day. I individually emailed freelancers and said, hey, I found you on LinkedIn, or I'd always want to say where I found their contact details from. And actually, there was one person I reached out to on LinkedIn. She said, I use Xero, but you should talk to Rachel from Rachel's List. And I remember when I got that email, and I was sitting in a co-working space in Paran, and literally just all day, every day, emailing freelancers. And then I spoke to Rachel and we had a chat on the phone and you tried it out and then you got your second account. And
I've got 2 accounts.
Yeah, that's it. And then get that reaction when people go, oh my God, where has this been? My entire life. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
And so you begin to understand more about what your ideal customer looks like, who's reacting, who is reacting. So there was nothing glamorous. We didn't do guerrilla marketing or YouTube that went viral, and we didn't get on Koshi's business, whatever, or nobody was interested apart from, a growing sort of core at that point of customers who just ended up being really happy. And then the other thing that we realized really quickly that we had in our control was making sure that every single customer interaction that we had was as good as we could make it. Because again, that was something that was in our control. So, that completely is the basis of our customer support, which you guys know we take very seriously. And in the early days, I think it took about 12 months, my first 12 months before it got to the point where I felt confident enough to take it off grant. I knew the software enough and I knew the sort of the freelance language. And at that point, it was like, we will work when our customers work. And if that means we're there on the weekend, if that means we're answering chats at 10 p.m., 1 a.m., we will be there to make sure that our customers have the best experience ever. Now, again, you learn that doesn't always mean saying yes. That doesn't always mean agreeing to everything, but that means, treating people with respect, making sure that they feel listened, making sure that they feel part of it, and providing then what was not always done to a freelance audience. You guys, as experienced freelancers, will know that freelancers are often ignored by large companies. That they're always the small guy, and we're like, we don't want Rounded to make our customers feel like that. No, they're our only customers, so every single customer is important. And that has become a serious weapon for us. Probably the most effective marketing effort that we put in was with our customer interaction. Obviously, as well as the product. Not to dismiss what the guys have done from a product point of view in improving the app, but customer service, has been easily our biggest weapon and the biggest driver of growth in Rounded.
That's so interesting. And, kind of relating what you did in building Rounded to what a freelancer would do is very similar to the letters of introduction, I suppose, that writers and copywriters would do. They would trawl LinkedIn, find their ideal customer, send them a letter of introduction and slowly build it that way. So it's a really sort of similar trajectory, but I'm guessing there have been, challenges along the way in growing. And can you take us through some of those?
Oh yeah, I mean, look, absolutely. There's been challenges, every day. The competitive landscape out there is absolutely crazy. That there's 1,000 other options, many of which are free. Many of which are, the larger companies just deciding, okay, well, we want to, as a loss leader, we'll just give our product away for $3 a month. We have, often accountants who aren't fans because we build our product for our end users and not their accountants. So we miss some of the really sort of more technical accounting-y things that mainly our customers don't need. We're not for everybody. So we can't guarantee that will be great for everybody, but the only thing we can do is be totally upfront and transparent about that. The challenges mainly have been getting ourselves in front of enough eyeballs. And that's really hard to do with no money, especially at the beginning, and it's like literally trying to push the big boulder up the hill so you can roll it down the other side. And hopefully we're sort of getting near the top of the hill now, and the boulder's getting a bit easier to push, and there's a few more hands pushing it as well. But the challenges were just establishing credibility, because the other thing, and probably like you as freelancers, is that people may make a decision to buy your product or service without having any personal interaction with you whatsoever. And that's our entire business model. So they look at, okay, well, it looks like it does what I want. Who else do I know that uses it? I'll go to my freelance Facebook group and ask what they think. I'll have a look on the App Store for reviews or Facebook for reviews, and they can't see that stuff. They make their decisions without it. So again, now we've got a lot more of that social proof that makes things easier. But getting that to begin with was hard.
I just want to jump in, and because I know that you guys did a lot of Q&As with freelancers and guest posting, and we did a review of Rounded on Rachel's List. I mean, how important was that content side of things in opening Rounded up to new audiences and helping you with your growth as well?
Yeah, actually, content has been massive. And when I talk about content, mainly what's been the game changer for us is blog content. What we realized is that in the world of freelancing, there is always a huge proportion of people thinking about it. And more often than not, they have no idea where to start.
Yep.
And so what we realized was that, capturing those people when they go to Google and say, how do I register for an ABN? Or is coffee for my client tax deductible? Or where can I find an invoice template? And at the beginning, of course, we did that ourselves, and we were lucky with a couple of blog posts, and it was really trial and error. But what we found was that these blog posts, and this is how we could organically begin to pull customers into our ecosystem, to make them understand who we were, to establish ourselves as subject matter experts and domain experts, and to hopefully encourage people to try our software, which has worked. Now we're lucky that we have an amazing freelancer who reached out after one of our podcasts and said, I'd love to work with you guys. And 18 months later, he still, he has transformed our content strategy, and it's been, amazing to see what he's done. Now that we've got a professional helping us, the consistency of posting and all that stuff. And it's helped us then to be able to concentrate on things like the webinars and everything else, which again, we the whole point about that is making it audience focused. It's never about Rounded. It's never about accounting software. It's always about the guest. It's always about the audience. Again, we haven't done anything particularly special, but it goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning, about sort of almost maniacal focus on your audience and understanding who your ideal customer is, making sure that everything you do is focused on them.
One thing I have noticed with your sort of marketing strategy is that you really targeted, I guess, leaders in the freelance community like Rachel to sort of be advocates and to, as you said, trial. Do you think that sort of advocates or leaders, I mean, people also say influencers, but in the nicest way, is that been part of your strategy as well?
It has, but again, there are some people who you talk to who are sort of much more commercial about it, which is fine, and for whom the relationship is commercial, where you pay to get access to their audience or whatever it may be. So we've tried a bit of that, and that's worked to a certain extent. The good thing about that is it means you can push things along and you can get sort of stuff done. The other relationships we have, and actually way more longevity and in the long term much more fruitful, have been relationships with people like Rachel, Rebecca Lambert, Monica Davidson, all of these sorts of people for whom actually, they're not particularly interested in the commercial side of it. It's like at the end of the day, you can be a software vendor quite easily, and everybody's been burnt by a software vendor, right? So It was way more about, okay, well, look, here we are, we'll let our product and service do the talking. And slowly what's happened is that, we built this sort of ever-growing army of fans. And I remember with one of them, and I reached out to her and said, hey, here we are, I'd love to talk to you. And she goes, oh, sorry, we recommend Wave. So, I'm not really interested in talking to you. I was like, okay, fair enough. And 18 months went by, and then obviously the thing happened with Wave, and she got back in touch sort of around about that time and said, like, you come up so often in our community and forum now that I'd love to talk to you. And it was like, great. And now we've built a fantastic relationship, and it's all user driven, and it feels like it's the payback. You reap what you sow. And thankfully the focus on the customer means that they are prepared to advocate for us, refer us, even defend us, to sometimes, that accounting software is one of those things that online forward discussions can get quite passionate about. Everybody loves, everybody loves the tool that they use, and and we've now got this sort of army of people who, will not only recommend us, but will actively defend us.
Evangelical.
Evangelical, absolutely. And you can't pay for that.
Yeah.
You got to have a
you
name
cannot
for
pay
them,
that.
like roundies, or there's got to be
Yeah, I
some cool
know
name.
that's yeah. We have thought about that, but everything we come up with is really cringeworthy.
Yeah.
So maybe I don't know. We'll keep thinking.
So you do see a lot of freelancers in your business because they're your customers. Do you see, aren't there some mistakes you see small businesses and freelancers continually making? Are there really common ways that we shoot ourselves in the foot?
It's not being organized is
Yeah.
probably the main one that we see. In that, our customer typically is somebody who's really good at what they do, but not necessarily, had much in the way of exposure or formal training around business or finances. So
they
when
might
I'm
be a
thinking
great
about,
writer, great
yeah,
photographer, great graphic designer, but they don't know how to run a business. And that's not what they learn at university, or even if they've come from corporate, there's been a whole department doing that. Now they've got to learn it.
yeah, absolutely. And so I see, especially around this time of year, or, whether it's quarterly buzz time or whatever it may be, when I see businesses or I see our customers stressed, it's because they're trying to catch up and everything's everywhere. And they have ignored, their own obligation to their own business. And they haven't invested enough time to sort of understand their own landscape and where they're at. Don't want to say too much about this, actually, because this is all the stuff that I've got for the tips at the end.
Yes.
So I think sort of generically and generally, lack of organization and perhaps a little lack of self-awareness about what you can and you can't do is probably where the main mistakes are made.
Do you think making like small incremental changes to your business over time, building that growth and customers and a reputation is better than looking for a silver bullet? I mean, are we all guilty of trying to rush things to get to that place of security?
I think so. I certainly know from Rounded in the early days, we would, oh, great, I've spoken to XYZ and they've said they've got this database of 20,000 people and they're going to put us on their EDM. And we're thinking, wow, amazing. We can get thousands and thousands of signups. And, you might, email goes out on a Friday afternoon and you get 3 signups or something. And so what we began to realize over time, and I think that this is applicable across any kind of business, is that, we look at our business as everything that we can do and execute successfully is what we call a 1%er. And it is if we can do enough 1%ers, eventually that will begin to make a change. But that kind of approach requires consistency. So, I would say, and often it doesn't really matter what it is that you're doing, but if you're, again, focused on your business, focused on your customer, and you commit to yourself that, right, this week I'm going to do X or whatever that translates to for you and your business, that even if it's just a 1% or even a 0.5%er, that makes you a 0.5% better off than you were at the beginning of the week or the month. And eventually, after a few months, you're 10%, 15%, 20% better than you were when you started 6 months ago. And it all just builds. And if you spend all your time looking for that that moonshot that's going to get you a billion followers or a viral video or the deal with the client that's going to be 80% of your income or whatever it's going to be, what we found is they're almost impossible. You might be lucky, but you can't rely on just that one lucky thing. And in the meantime, while you're waiting for that lucky thing, work on the 1%ers.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, I wanted to ask you kind of the flip side of that. If you get that momentum and you almost have too many customers, I mean, how do you handle the challenges that come along with that?
Has that happened
for you guys?
Yeah, when we get to the point we've got too many customers, I'll come back and we can do another webinar about that. But so I'm not sure that it's possible. But certainly I would say for us, the challenges now are very different than the challenges used to be, a couple of years ago. So for us, the challenge now is scaling, finding good people. Hiring people is hard, especially in today's employment market, because there's such a dearth of talent. Obviously, we've lost a huge influx of talent from overseas that's now not able to come here. We're finding that that's a challenge. Secondly, speed. That means that with a small team, we've got all of this stuff that we want to be able to do, but priorities change every day, and Having the size of the team so that you don't get derailed is really hard. And so, that we can execute more professionally and consistently when it comes to things like product development. So that's a massive challenge. And like the other thing that we find, I don't know if you guys find it, but actually we've realized that when you've got no money, there's very few decisions that you can make, and therefore there's very few mistakes that you can make.
Yes.
Actually having a budget and knowing, right, well, I've got to turn this into something that, I can tangibly say has been of benefit and help the business to progress. And it's like, we've done a lot of things which we probably would have been better just setting fire to $50 notes. That's really easy to do. And so, one of the challenges of scaling and getting bigger is learning how to make better decisions, and spend money wisely, which, again, when you've got no money, you've got nothing to lose. So.
Yeah.
So following on that, I'd like to talk a little more about employing staff. You mentioned that it's really hard. Was it a hard decision to increase your team? You obviously had a really small core. And then if you're a founder, is it hard to start delegating? Because you'd feel quite personal about this sort of project. It would be hard to delegate and sort of release a little bit of ownership. Did you find that hard?
Yes, we did. And only because, we felt we had such high standards, and we were quite uncompromising with that. We made, a number of mistakes, and again, wasted a lot of money on hiring people that, couldn't quite meet the standards that we had set. So my team is a blended team. So I have, 2 employees of Rounded, Roxanne and Michelle, who are both part of our customer success team. And the challenge there was to get them to a point where they were bought in to the culture, to the mission, to what we were doing, to the focus on customers. And fortunately, we've had some luck, and we would be in dire straits, if those guys were to decide that they wanted to move on elsewhere, and that may happen. But what happens is, with employees is you build up that trust, you build up that relationship, and delegating has over time become easier. I also have a number of freelancers that help us. One of the great things about Rounded is that we have access to a huge pool of freelance talent that we can call on, and actually the 2 freelancers that I work with in my team both approached me directly and said, I'd love to work with you, and they've both been with us for 18 months now. So that's been really fantastic experience. But again, that's about different challenge of getting to a point where they understand exactly what's required, and you allow them and help them to consistently deliver work that actually takes things off your plate, especially when it comes to content. There's no point in me paying a content writer and I then have to spend an hour and a half editing and notes and 3 revisions and everything else. I might as well just do it myself. We've been lucky that over time we've been able to find people who have come with very, very professional people, very highly skilled people, and as you build a relationship, the trust there means that the delegation becomes easier.
Mm-hmm. Anything that you think is important about getting customers or clients, or growing that community of raving fans?
It's going to be different for everybody, but we chose to go down the path of being super accountable to our customers, to ensuring that we provided an unparalleled user experience, and that's meant a lot of hard work. But as I was saying before, there is no doubt that has paid us back a million times over. At this early stage where we haven't had the luxury of just being able to plaster the Rounded logo all over town and all over the internet.
Put it on bus stops.
You haven't got that. You haven't got that billboard happening yet.
Yeah, absolutely. One day.
One day.
Sort of, I'm based in Melbourne, and you get off the train at Flinders Street, and there's that massive billboard on the top of the Young and Jackson's pub there on the corner of Swanston and Flinders Street. Maybe one day we'll have a logo there on the King's Cross banner, the billboard there. But look, again, I think for the freelance audience, the only thing I will say is we have learned, that there's nothing more valuable to the business than a happy customer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we can do another podcast about how you leverage that, and reviews and testimonials and all that kind of thing. but so much goes on, for us, we know so much goes on behind the scenes that we never see. We get so many referrals, and sometimes stuff pops out the blue that we speak to, and you go, oh yeah, I was referred by X, or no, and there's, I think that, it doesn't matter what kind of business you're in, whether you're a freelancer or ASX top 50 company or whatever it is, there is nothing more valuable to a company than a happy customer. And that will be something that, I think we take with us wherever we go.
Yeah, great.
Wow. Thanks, Oliver. That's so great.
Thank you.
You move on to something that freelancers out there are collectively dreading, and that's tax time. So what are your tips for making that end of financial year a bit less stressful, especially when you're working for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said before, this will be my 6th end of financial year with Rounded. It's always our busiest time. And it can be, it's obviously stressful for many of our customers, and can sometimes be stressful for us as well as we help them navigate it. The things that I have noticed are that the successful freelancers, by and large, are the freelancers that invest time in their business and invest time in tax time to make it as easy as possible. And unfortunately, again, there's no silver bullet here. If your listeners are hoping that I'm going to be able to sort of sprinkle some fairy dust and magically make end of financial year easy, it's not going to be like that. But what we've learned from our freelance customers is that, for number one, the onus is on you as a business owner to invest time to understand your obligations to tax. Number one. Number two, that will help you understand your limitations and allow you to get help where needed. So, there are going to be, as I think, Lynn, you mentioned before, there are some super financially literate customers that we have that sail through. They don't need an accountant. They're all over it. And that's great. Fantastic. The rest of us, is a combination of, I can do most of it, but I still want my accountant to dot the I's and cross the T's, or whatever it is. Even if you're at the other end where you don't want to have anything to do with it, having properly structured records, that kind of thing will save your accountant hours and you hundreds of dollars. So again,
so
understanding
true.
I am prepared to do X, but outside of X, I need help, or I want somebody else to do it. That would be the second point: know your limitations. And I also get that for many freelancers that it can be hard to justify spending what can seem to be like quite a lot of money on getting an accountant's help or whatever. But I am absolutely of no doubt that that's an investment in your business that will pay massive dividends, both financially, mentally, time, everything else. So it's worth it. But work out what you can do yourself and what you need help with. From a more practical point of view, freelancing 101, get a dedicated business bank account.
Yes.
Run your transactions and your invoices through one. Like most of the problems that we see when people are catching up is that they're going back through 8 or 9 months of financial statements, trying to pick out business transactions, what business, what's personal, where's this income gone, where's that income gone. And again, there's a cost involved, but if you look at it from a time perspective, it's got to be one of the first things that you should do as a professional freelancer or a business owner, is get a dedicated business bank account. And finally, what else am I going to finish off with? You need decent accounting software.
You had to slip that in
to
there.
bring it all together. I had to slip it in there, didn't I? I had to slip it in there.
I have to say that decent accounting software makes everything so easy. I mean, I have a master's of business, so I think I'm fairly financially astute, but I'm human. So I love the fact that everything's in there and documented, but I still get my accountant to check it because, it's so easy to put something in wrong at the end of the day and when I'm invoicing on a Sunday night or whatever. And it's really important to, but the software, I decided that it saves me a lot of money. By paying that, it actually saves hours and hours of paying an accountant to fix up a mess at the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%. And again, to maybe perhaps finish off on a more balanced note, I wasn't necessarily saying that it has to be rounded. We're not for everybody, and but there's no, there's every single half decent accounting software out there will give you a free trial. So if you're not using it, try a couple, find out, talk to your networks, everything else. But again, from most of them are fairly cost effective. They're all 100% tax deductible. And, I often talk to customers about the difference between value and cost.
Yes.
So a lot of the time, a freelancer, especially if they're in the beginning and being quite cautious about what they spend, might focus on the whatever the subscription is a month, or it's just another 10 or 15 bucks a month I don't need. That's fine. But if that bit of software saves you, an hour a month, and you're charging yourselves out at 80 bucks an hour, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
That there's an hour there that you could be spending on servicing a client, looking for new business, writing content, doing whatever it is, that's way better than like searching through your handbag or wallet for crusty old receipts that are faded and all the rest of it. So yeah.
That's great. Oh, Oliver, thank you so much. It has just been fantastic having you on the show and hearing more about the rounded journey, and also, giving our listeners so many great tips. I think this is going to be one of our longest episodes of all time, which is something of a record.
I told you, that could be my fault.
But look, I think that does bring us to the end of the show. So everybody, please check out the iTunes podcast app for a brief summary of the episode and to find out more about Rounded. And don't forget, we have 2 special discount codes for Rachel's List members. The general code is actually for anyone, and we'll pop that in the show notes. And gold members, you can find your code for 25% off a monthly membership for the first 6 months. And that is hidden on the Rachel's List jobs board, which you can access because you are a gold member. But thank you again. Thank you, Ollie. Really appreciate you coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Okay, we'll see you all next week, everybody. Bye.